In today's video, we are back in Copilot Studio and we are going to look at 4 ways of how to work with Dataverse. So, for those of you who don't know what Dataverse is, it's Microsoft's sort of cloud database which Dynamics and stuff is built on. It's incredibly powerful. Unfortunately, it's part of sort of the Power Platform Premium features, so you don't entirely get it for free. But it's particularly useful, and why we like it as developers is the idea that we can package Dataverse tables and model-driven Power Apps and those kind of things with our solutions. So when we deploy a solution to a customer, everything gets deployed with it. I do not need to run separate scripts. As I deploy my solution, the tables get provisioned. So it's incredibly powerful. And makes sort of managing your app really, really easy. Now, we're not going to go into too much detail around Dataverse tables and model-driven apps and those kind of things in this video, but we do want to look at the 4 ways we can work with the Dataverse and look at some gotchas, right? Because that's the important thing. We don't only want to talk about the stuff that works as the demo should. So, first things first, we're going to take a look at knowledge. Now, this is something that works particularly well. If I click on Dataverse, I can go and say, I'm going to pick my account, and let's just go with account, right? Go to my account. Now it's going to take a second to load, but what effectively this does, it gives us a connector to go and ask questions on our account. So if I had to go and ask my agent now, which accounts do I have? We're expecting to see 2, right? Because what we're expecting to see is that it works in the same environment that I am working in right now. Okay, I can see I've got demo test and I've got Billy's Toast and Jam. And it's quite nice in the sense that it gives you a reference to the table. So I've used this in a client scenario where we built an agent to manage children with special needs at a school, and it just works so well. Right? Because obviously in the back, this can be connected to a full-blown app and the workflow and everything, workflows that that are relevant to the business case, and like it's just such a clean solution. So that's number 1, right? Very, very easy to do. From that perspective, so quite nice, quite simple. The second one that I'm going to look at as well is also probably the fastest way to start doing CRUD operations on the Dataverse. So I'm going to go and add a tool, and I am going to go into my Model Context Protocol, or MCP. Now this list is growing. It's literally grown since last week. The one we care about is the Dataverse MCP. So as you can see, the typical cloud providers would start building out MCP servers for us to work with it. Now, if you don't know what MCP is, it's a standardized protocol for our agents to talk to our services. It's not entirely a wrapper around an API. A good analogy that I've heard before is an MCP server is what you can do. Like you're basically asking it a question. So it's very action, very verb orientated, whereas APIs are a bit more granular and they're a bit more noun orientated. So accounts and those kind of things. Account, user, log, whatever. Whereas an MCP server would be request a quote or update information, those kind of things, right? So I'm going to go and add my MCP server, add and configure. And I am going to do just that. So if I go into my additional details, not too much to understand here. But as I said, we're thinking about verbs, like what are the questions and stuff we can ask, right? So or what are the actions we can interact with? So nice little, I want to say it's almost free because now we can do anything. I want to go and add an account named Sally's Coffee, and that's gonna figure out how to engage with the MCP server. It's gonna obviously prompt for permissions, and it just adds, right? Now, the first gotcha that I want to highlight in this, because this happened to me in that use case I spoke about earlier, is the MCP server allowed me to add records without completing required fields. So that's important for us to understand. The second thing is, if we want to have a user or sort of a journey or a user experience where we say, I want these 5 fields, and as a user, I might not know what these fields are. I'm new to Dynamics, and I don't know what fields to go and add into account to have it completed, right? I'm new. I don't know. I need to add an address, whatever the case might be. The MCP server isn't great at doing that. So that's problem one. Problem two that I have with the MCP server is if I go and list tables, I get everything. Right now, everything that I've got access to because authentication is passed through, but it's basically a universal way of engaging a database. It's basically like saying, here's a database, not an application that you can use with tailored user experiences and those kind of things. Here's a raw database that you can work with. So if you've got a more technical audience and you just want to get this out very quickly, absolutely wonderful tool. It takes you seconds to get up and running, but there are a few gotchas, right? So if I go to my accounts now and refresh, we should see Sally's Coffee over here. It would just always work with the environment that I'm currently in. So what's really cool about this is also, if we go look at our tool, there's not much to configure, right? And we'll see in the following scenarios what that configuration might look like, right? So it's basically got that there's really nothing for us to do. So very simple to configure. So when you go from environment 1 to environment 2 in a deployment scenario, obviously we're building in a development environment now, and we would deploy to staging or whatever. It'll just carry across to the environment, so your data won't get mixed up. So that's number 2, MCP server, really useful to get stuff done quick and easy, but you are engaging with the entire database. The third one, and this is something that the Power Platform, and I think there's so much weight behind this, is this idea that Microsoft has exposed the entire Power Platform ecosystem, right? So if I can do it in Power Automate, I can do it in Copilot Studio, and even if it's not perfect, we'll see when we look at number 4 how I can get around those kind of things. So I'm going to go to my Dataverse, and I'm going to go and add a new role. Add and configure. All right, so what we can do here is I can go and add a new role. So I'm going to say add account, right? And we're going to go add a customer account. Okay, nice and easy. A few more options to look at here, right? So there's a couple of things we need to know. And there's a big gotcha with this little input section over here. If I expand additional details, I'm not going to ask the end user, and I'm going to use the end user credentials. I'm not going to give it its own credentials because we want to maintain permission. If the user doesn't have access in Dynamics or whatever the case might be, we don't want to override those permissions most of the time, right? Cool. And then before we get into the input, because this is something to talk about, probably something to know here is that when we say once this tool has run, what to do and not give a response as a user. And we sort of saw this with the MCP server, even though in the interface we could see it completed, we didn't have a sort of an experience on the UX side that was great, right? So if I click no response, I won't even get that. But if I go write a response with generative AI, it's basically going to just go and figure out what it did and give me a response. That's usually good enough unless you want to be very specific. So I'm going to save this guy, and I'm going to refresh the chat space so we can go and test this quickly. And I'm going to go add an account. Right, and it's going to prompt me to... I need to take out the MCP server first. Delete the MCP server because I got a little bit confused. And refresh again just to clear it out. And now I'm going to say add an account. Okay, it's going to say I need to know which environment. Now, realistically, this is not what you want to do, right? So yeah, we've got some options over there, but our end users won't know this, and that's not a great idea at all. So what we'd want to do here is in our tools, go and edit this one and select the environment that we want to do manually. And I'm going to call this my training environment. And I want to go and pick my table, right? So those are quite important things for us to do. And I'm going to go and add an account. All right, now you'll see here that I've got row item with the little asterisk over there. It says required. But as soon as I pick account, the interface is going to go away and it's going to figure out, oh, hang on. Well, for this table, I just need account name. But we can go and add additional information, like we can go country. Right, we can go address one country and so on and so forth. You can go and add as much as you want. Within these particular parameters, I can go and customize what this looks like. I can go and, that description is pulled from Dataverse, so that's nice and easy. This one we might want to change. Let's just go this, our country, customer country. And, all right, great. And then we will keep the entire user response. And I don't think there's too much that we'd want to do over here. All right, we're going to keep this nice and simple. And just go save and run it again. So what we're expecting now is to say, all right, well, go and ask me the fields that I've put in the order that they are over here, right? So if I go and swap these around, I will get asked for the country first and then the account. So add an account. Let's just clear this out to be safe. All right, we'll see our add an account and account name and customer country are the two parameters it needs. Name of the country would be, let's just go Sally's Cakes and some biscuits. All right, and now it wants the primary address of the country. So I'm just going to call this Australia. All right, so this from an experience perspective is much better for an end user right now. When you've got 50 fields that you want to add at one time, that does become a little bit laborious, so be careful with how many fields you add. But yeah, nice and easy. If I go back to this one, I'm going to refresh, and then I've got my Sally's Cakes and Biscuits. If we go into that, then we should see Sydney or Australia at least, in the country. So great, right? Nice and easy. Now, this one has a few gotchas. Realistically, when we deploy this, we do not want to hard code our environments. And all right, well, tables are okay, right? Because the table's going to be there. But that connection is what we want to change. Now, what happens when you deploy this? I'm going to quickly go to one I deployed earlier. In my ad account, you'll see here that I am currently in the YouTube environment. That environment stays the environment that you selected when you deployed it. And you can change it, but realistically, thinking at scale, you're gonna forget. Someone is gonna forget at some point. So we don't really want that, right? We want a way to avoid having to do this. So what we expect to be able to do, which doesn't work unfortunately, is I would like to go and pick an environment variable. So let's just say, I don't have the particular environment variable that I was looking for here. Well, let's just, for argument's sake, that is the environment name. Then this interface breaks, right? Even if I go into code view, I can see here that my inputs are the environment name and the account entity, and then I've got the address country here as well. So it looks like it's gonna work, right? And it might just be like a little UI glitch, but it doesn't. If I go and add an account now, what it's gonna do is just break, right? It's not gonna know what to do. It can't read the environment variable sort of in real time. So that is a little bit unfortunate, but it might be something that gets resolved in the future. But it is something that does bite a little bit when you are developing, right? So that's the only real gotcha with that. So that's something for us to remember. Now, the big thing also here that we need to consider is right beyond this is a step closer to a good user experience. But what if we want to have some interceding steps, right? Logging as an example, right? Or notifying someone in that region when this account's created. Those kind of things. And how can we change from one environment to the other environment, like use those environment variables properly. So that's number 4 that we're going to talk about now. And I know I've been keeping you guys for quite a while, so I'm going to try and wrap this one up nice and quick. I'm going to go and add a tool. And I'm going to go flow, and I'm going to create a new tool, agent flow. So like when we develop stuff for customers, this is sort of our go-to approach, right? From a deployment perspective, from a control perspective, from a UX perspective, this seems to be the most robust way. It's a little bit of work because there are flows to manage and environment variables to create, etc., but it's just the best way we've seen so far as a team. So I'm going to go and add an input, and I'm going to say account name, and I'm going to say here the name of the customer. So if you have ever built a Power Automate flow with a button or something, this is exactly the same. There's nothing different, right? And I can go and say my city, right? From here on out, it's Power Automate, right? So I can go and go to my Dataverse table, and I can go and add a new row. I can pick a table. I can set my environment variables. Everything that we would expect to do, right? So I've got my normal connections over there, and everything will just work as we would typically do in a normal scenario, right? So on my account name, I'm just going to go and add the account name here that we just added. Come on. So account name and my city. Power Automate is not working with me today. City, and I can publish this, right? So nice and easy, right? Really, really easy for us to use. Normal Power Automate, I can build in conditions and loops and whatever I want. So when you've got a very specific, sophisticated set of instructions you want your agent to execute, this would be the way to go, right? As I said, it's the most robust. I think you've got an absolute tailored experience with the inputs that you want to select. So we should see that flow popping up in a moment. And obviously I forgot to name it properly. So there we go. But we can see here that it's a flow connector. And if we go into it, we'll see all our options. So yeah, these would be the same that we'd expect. So I'm just going to go and call this add account, and with city, and do that, and then we'll just save this guy. Go back to my tools, delete the old one, and then just quickly run this one through a demo. Okay, and we'll see here that when we run this little map that Copilot Studio gives us, it will go and run the flow, which is exactly what we would expect to see. The name of the account is big, and the city is, all right, something like that. Cool, picked it up, and we should be good to go, right? That flow is going to run in the back, and then we will get a response. Now, obviously, I didn't configure any responses, so it's good that that happened, because now we don't know what happened. But if we go back here, it should have all gone to plan. Johnny Biggs over there in city. So that's it, guys. 4 ways to work with Dataverse. You need to pick the use case that's going to be right for you. So yeah, good luck. Happy coding, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheers.